The new provisions on non-assurance services and fees relate to all entities, but of course have a special aspect and differentiate public interest entities. The additional independence requirements for clients that are public interest entities are the focus of these provisions. And of course, they are a natural focus because these entities are of higher public interest, have a higher impact on the public interest through their financial condition. I would say that the other focus, of course, is on provision of non-assurance services to audit clients, as I have said before, which are a major area that creates threats to independence. So what is really the threat that we're trying to address? It's a very well-known threat. It's already a part of the code. It's the self-review threat. In other words, reviewing your own work. Everybody can understand that reviewing your own work, if you think about it, it's the opposite, the exact opposite of independence, of an independent review, of an audit. So the main focus of the provisions here is indeed the prohibition of anything that may lead to self-review. I will say more about that, of course, but I'm saying that in the provisions we have put together and we have just completed, the prohibition is so complete that it is not just the prohibition of any provision of non-assurance service that creates a self-review threat, but it's a prohibition of any provision of non-assurance service that might create a risk for self-review. So it is a very strong prohibition of even the likelihood of creating a self-review threat. And in addition, it is a prohibition that is not subject to a materiality threshold. The code, in its existing form, before these revisions, had a materiality threshold, saying that it was only prohibited, that the provision of a service was prohibited only if it was significant. This does not exist any longer. So it's a blanket prohibition. And of course, all who know the matter and are familiar with non-assurance services realize that the self-review threat may arise in a broad range of present-day non-assurance services that firms may offer or might offer to their audit clients. But, you know, the prohibition will also cover future non-assurance services that may not be formalized still, but which may be based on new technologies and new technological processes. So we think that it is effective, we think that it is comprehensive, and we think that it is a far-reaching, forward-looking provision that strengthens very much the confidence in audits and in the independence of the auditor. To my mind, I must say that I think this is a true milestone in the strengthening of independence and in the language of the code, the strengthening of independence, both in fact, in substance, and in appearance. Let me say a few things about the fee provisions, which are a very important complement to the NAS provisions. First of all, one of the basic concepts underlying the fee provisions is transparency. Now, transparency of fees paid by a company to an audit firm for audit or non-audit services is very important in our opinion. And it is important for investors and for other stakeholders to know this in order to be able to make judgments and assessments and to acquire confidence in audit and auditors. So transparency is a very important part. The second item is that in the fees provisions, there is a set of requirements that attempts to restrict or eliminate the persistence of what we call fee dependency. In other words, undue dependence of the auditor from a single client. And there are specific provisions here relating both to PIs and to non-PIs. This is important. And of course, another very important part of the fees provisions is that they elevate and increase the role of those charged with governance in audited firms in deciding on the provision or not the provision of non-assurance services, in deciding in the level of fees and payments, and in concurring to these items with their own decision-making. So this is an explicit role for those charged with governance in the matters of financial relationships with the auditors, in the matters of audit versus non-audit fees, and in the matters of transparency. And the last thing I want to say in this matter is that these two sets of provisions, NAS and fees, were worked with high coordination between them, and they should be read and used precisely in a very complementary fashion because they are really designed to work together. Now, all in all, to complete this, if I may, these represent a higher and much more robust status for global independence requirements. They offer a principles-based solution to a major perception of gaps in independence, which can be used as a global solution. And of course, as I said before, it is very valuable both to investors, but also to professional accountants and auditors, because it is a set of provisions that strengthen independence and thereby strengthen confidence in the audit.